peeps.
Hey, peeps. We are, here we go.
Big love
Hug.
hug.
I think that's the best one we ever did.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah,
We don't practice it. We should practice that.
yeah. Next time we'll practice it.
Yeah, we say that every time. But that one was pretty good. Nice to see you.
Yeah, good to be with you. We're in different states now for the first time.
Ack.
Yeah, well, for the first time since I really moved, because we've
Yes,
done
that's
some.
true. We've been practicing this for a while.
Yeah.
But here we are together.
Yeah. Oh, I know. We're going through some growing pains as friends with this move. It was hard to leave. I'll just tell everyone when I left home, well, first of all, Jess came over to my house for 3 days in a row just to say hi, basically,
If I
because she
could get a hug,
could.
get a big love hug.
Yeah, and then the very last day when I was moving, she and a couple other friends came over to wave me goodbye as we drove away, and it was so special. It was just we both realized that both of our grandparents used to do that when we were kids, and there was just like something so deep and heartful about that wave goodbye in the driveway, and yeah, just it was so important to me when I was a kid with my grandpa to wave goodbye. And it was just the sweetest thing that he was like always committed to doing that, to going outside and waving goodbye. And just to have you guys standing there doing it, it was, I haven't had that since then,
Yeah,
since I was a kid. Yeah, that was so special to drive away like that.
yeah, for me
Yeah,
too.
yeah,
Just every last second.
yeah. Yeah, until we couldn't see each other anymore, just
Mhm.
waving.
It's interesting. It was like the same feeling when I scattered my dad's ashes in a lake, and like I didn't want to cry because I didn't want to miss a second
Mm,
of seeing them leave and seeing
mm,
him leave. Like the
wow.
same kind of like I wanted to soak that moment up. It's like those moments are they're crystallized. Those are like moments in time that will forever be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think I could stop myself from crying. It's just part of the whole thing. I would cry when I'd wave goodbye to my grandpa. I cried when I waved goodbye to you, and I'm still crying.
And we're here. We're still here. We're still here.
Yeah, and I love the crying too.
Me
Like,
too.
it's so special to be moved that much in life.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Yeah,
I'm a big crier too, obviously.
yeah. It's funny because I never wear makeup, but I did put some on today, and
I
that's
was
the
gonna
one time when I
say,
don't want to cry.
yeah, kind of sparkly. You got some sparkles.
Yeah, I put it on and then I was like, I don't know how to put on makeup. So anyway, might look a little funny. I think I need a lesson.
All
Today,
right, what's on tap?
today we're going to talk about pleasure. We're talking about pleasure.
Nice.
Why talk about pleasure?
Yeah, tell us. Tell us why. What do you got up your sleeve?
You know, we get to have a life, we get to have a body, we get to have a life. Think of all of those millions of sperms and that very limited number of eggs, and the fact that the one of those millions and millions of sperm connected with that one egg, and we came to be. Like, this life to me is just an absolute miracle. The fact that I exist feels to me like an absolute miracle. And especially as I age, it feels like a very limited miracle, like the
There's an
clock is
expiration
ticking.
date to this miracle
Yes, there's an expiration date to this miracle. Well, we don't know what's on the other side of it, but at least life as I
for
know it
this body.
now,
For this body.
yeah. And I don't want to waste a second of it.
Yeah.
I don't want to lose a minute of it. And it's just so easy to get caught up in cultural hypnosis of negativity and thinking something's wrong and thinking something's bad and feeling shame. And there's just this whole kind of zeitgeist that we've inherited through, I believe it's through religious control of humans,
Mm.
Judeo-Christian type of shame and guilt inheritance that pretty much is pervasive through the world. I bet Muslim probably has their version of it too. I don't know. But I feel like it robs us of the miracle. I feel like it clouds over the miracle of life, and we don't get to experience it, and then it's done, and then we
Yeah.
miss it. I
Yeah.
mean, that's what I'm afraid of. That's what I don't want, is to miss the miracle.
Yeah.
And so my hack is to focus on pleasure, is to really receive the gift of life in this body. Every breath, as much as I can, every movement, every thought.
Mm.
Like how far can I take this is my personal practice. How far can I take this pleasure thing? And
Mm.
so far, there don't seem to be any negative side effects. Whereas I can tell you there's a lot of negative side effects to the whole self-criticism, feeling bad about your life and feeling bad about
Right.
yourself
So,
thing.
so I have a question right away,
Great.
because the mind generally slides into negativity like water falling down a hill or rain falling down from the clouds.
The mind?
Yeah, like thoughts, like self-criticism, and maybe you've hacked yourself out of this, that it doesn't work, that's not where you go. I feel like for most people, at least, I mean, I don't know most people, but for a lot of people, the mind goes towards self-criticism and negativity and what's wrong here. And to choose to shift that thinking into what's right, what's pleasure, like I feel like that's the work.
Yeah. And so I wouldn't say that that's the mind. I
I
wouldn't
don't have a
call that the
question.
mind. Hmm?
That wasn't really a question, but that's
Well,
what I notice.
I appreciate that framing. And I wouldn't call that the mind, because I think the mind is magical and powerful and
Mm,
definitely our ally. I would call that the inner critic.
right. A
The
part
inner
of the
critic,
mind. It's a part of the mind, but you're
I
right.
wouldn't
I mean,
even
you
call
said,
it that. I
oh,
wouldn't call it
really?
that. No, no, no,
It's not
no.
part of the mind?
No, I would call it a parasite. It's the
Oh,
parasite of
okay.
this zeitgeist of the Judeo-Christian inheritance that has
Oh,
kind of
mm,
uh, has, what is it, coagulated into a thought form that we at some point in our formative years kind of tune into and realize, oh, this is how people think. This is what the world is. But it is not our nature. That's what I want to separate it out of, is that it
right.
is not our nature to do that. Animals don't do it and babies don't do it. We learn it.
Yeah.
It's a learned behavior. It's not our mind. Our mind is like a computer program, right?
God, I love thinking of it as a parasite,
It's a parasite,
because when I imagine that sort of parasite sort of infects the thing,
and
right?
it
But
makes
but
you
you
think it's you, right?
right,
It
you
like
think that
takes
it's real.
over.
It's right, exactly. And if you're able to extract the parasite, like you said this before to me, which I love, that the mind is creative and inspired, and like music comes out of the mind, and poetry and inspiration, like that's all mind. And like this idea, like quiet the mind, don't listen to the mind isn't your friend, like all of these other stories, like no, 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 it's
No.
not, like free the mind up for like thinking about connection and love and what moving towards pleasure, like those are thoughts too.
Yes.
It's really actually quite revolutionary to think of the that critical thinking as a parasite.
It's a parasite. It's like a virus in your computer, right?
Right,
It's like a
right.
program, your mind is like a computer.
Hmm.
It's just empty space that can be programmed. And I believe that it's originally programmed with our essence, with our
Hmm.
innocence, with our pleasure. Babies are seeking pleasure and responding to pain and discomfort. That's natural, you know. But we download this program when we're 3 or 4 or 5, and the problem is that we just keep running that same program. And with your regular computer, you have to click that update thing. Otherwise, your computer starts acting funky, right? We got
Hmm.
all kinds of funky computers going on around here, funky mind computers,
Hmm. We need
because
to
we
keep
never update the
updating.
program.
Right, right, right.
The program
Even
goes in and it
right.
stays. It says the
There's
same.
also programming before, like generational, like there's other,
Yes.
it's not even like in our lifetime. There's all this like the computer maybe has come with a virus.
Well, I think that when we're born, because I think that if you took that baby and gave it to the wolves, it wouldn't have that programming. I don't think it's so much in our
Interesting.
DNA. I think
You
it's
don't
in
think so?
I think it's in the mirroring that we do with our family, with our parents. Yes, they mirrored their parents. Those people mirrored their parents, So we do inherit shame and guilt, but it's not that shame and guilt is not in our blood and our bones. It's learned.
Hmm.
Definitely, definitely.
There have been, I don't know because I haven't read the studies, but I've heard of studies where there actually is genetic trauma that's passed from generations. I don't know. I don't know the studies, but that's just something that I've heard and.
Well, I mean, I can say definitely I carry something from my Holocaust ancestors. I definitely carry something. But if I didn't know I had Holocaust ancestors, if I didn't
Interesting.
get raised by my parents who were raised by their parents who were
Right,
Holocaust people, like
right.
would I know? I don't I think
That's a
that a
good
lot of it
question.
I've heard recently it's like 50-50 nature nurture. I can't remember exactly where I heard that on some podcast also, but it was that we could just think of ourselves as 50-50 nature and nurture. But I think that this inner critic thing is completely 100% non-nurturing,
Right,
it's
right,
completely anti-nurture.
right, right, right.
And nobody's trying to hurt their kids with this. It's just how they were raised. It's all
Hmm.
in the unconscious. It's all in the
Hmm.
collective unconscious. Nobody's trying to do it. We just don't know what a pleasure-based life would look like. We just don't have a template. It's not out there. You have to
So
create.
let's talk about that. Let's talk about what you're up to and
Yeah,
how you got to where you are.
right,
I
right.
think it's amazing, actually.
Yeah, it is amazing. I really do feel like I did hack my way through life, bushwhack my way out of that stuff, that
Hmm.
mess of brambles. Well, the first thing I feel like that needs to happen is that we need to, like we're talking about, identify that the inner critic is like a parasite. And I don't even think of it, I like to call it the internalized critic instead of inner critic, because inner
Mm.
almost sounds like it's innate in there, but
Hmm.
I think we internalize it and that we actually like make a choice and take it on. I can almost
Hmm.
remember a time when I think back and feel back, I can almost remember thinking, ow, somebody hurt my feelings, or I watched somebody get abused, or whatever it was. And I self protected and thought, yikes, life is scary. People
Hmm.
are scary. I
Yep.
better, I better do something to protect myself. Like maybe if I say these things to myself, it won't hurt so much when it comes from the outside. I believe
Mm-hmm.
that that's why we do it. I think that that's why we have this inner critic, or internalized critic, is that it's strangely a protection at
Right,
first.
right.
And that's why the program needs to be updated, because after a while we don't need that protection anymore.
Hmm.
And
It
it
was
and it
valuable maybe at the time that it was used initially, but
yeah.
over time it gets sort of not sort of it gets in the way.
Yeah. Yeah, it ruins the party. It really
It
ruins the
really
party.
does. It does. Right.
So, thinking like recognizing maybe when it started, thinking back to like the first time you remember feeling bad about yourself, and just identifying that moment when you took that program in, when you made that choice or absorbed that energy, even if you get a sense of what age you were. And then also getting clear on, what does the critic say to me? Like,
Mhm.
what is it doing? What is
Mhm.
it hammering on me? What's its classic line, or its
Can I
classic.
share can I share this example? I mean, this one's so clear to me. So, I was 9, and every week we change in my house, we change our sheets. Like we just, strip the bed and then they get washed and then my mom would put the new sheets on. I came home from school and my bed wasn't made yet. I mean, it's ridiculous. I was 9, but I was like, I just burst into tears and I was just sobbing on my bed because I realized I'm alone. because it's up to me. Now it's up to me to make my own bed. My mom is not going to do it for me. And it was like this mark of time. Like and the story was very clear. The words just came to me like, I'm alone. I mean,
Wow.
it was sheets on a bed, but I was
Uh-huh.
9, right? Like, but something had changed. My mom had always done it for me, and it wasn't done. And it just like, and that story, I'm alone, has been so pervasive and has kept me isolated and feeling and disconnected from other people in ways that it's just like run my life.
Wow.
I mean, I could go back. I'm getting chills, like in hackles, and like all these physical symptoms, remembering crying on my unmade bed
Wow.
and that story, that parasite went straight in.
I'm alone.
I'm
Right.
alone.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to do anything for me. It's all up to me and nobody cares and I'm alone.
Nobody cares. Right. Phew.
Ah,
Yeah. Are you okay?
I want to update.
Yeah. Update. So what the first way I like to do this is to, instead of saying I'm alone and nobody cares about me, I like to bring it out here outside myself and have it be externalize the critic, right? Get it out
Mhm.
of here where I call it a log jam. It's like there's a log jam of criticism and emotions and feelings and hurt and fear and all that stuff. And it gets all log jammed up in our throat.
Mm,
That's where I think it happens. And so to take it out and have this voice say, you're alone. You
mm,
are alone. And then inside here, I can identify more with my innocent, vital self, the one that's getting criticized, the one that's being talked to. And that's the problem, is that we identify with the critic. We tend to identify with the critic because it's the one that has more power, right? We don't want to identify with the one that's hurt. So we tend to, that's where this virus or this parasite thing comes in. And if we start being mean to ourselves, right? The critic is often mean or puts us down, right? Like underneath you're alone, like if we ask the critic, well, why am I alone? Why am I alone? There might be something about worthiness or
yeah, I'm not lovable. Yeah.
I'm not lovable, right?
Hmm.
So then I'm not lovable. It's better if you pull it out here and say, you're not lovable. And then you get to be you, and then this voice gets to be outside you, and
Right.
you get to identify as yourself.
Right.
And the inner critic becomes an outer critic. And then at least it's out there. And in here, you can say, wow, I feel really sad. This little entity is telling me that I'm not lovable. Is that true?
Hmm.
So the problem is with the inner critic or internalized critic that we don't there's no critical thinking. It's interesting because it's a critic, but we don't do any critical thinking about its message.
Right.
We don't ask it questions. We don't challenge it back. We just mostly like cower in the corner and guard ourselves and just continually get hammered by it because we think it's we believe those are our thoughts. There's nothing to push against because we're the ones coming up with that thought. No,
Hmm.
no, no. That
Right.
is
Right.
not our thought. That is culture's thought that
Hmm.
we've taken on. So
Hmm.
separate it out and start identifying more as myself, the one who gets criticized, and then find at least a question for the critic, at least one question. Why am I unlovable? What's unlovable about me? And then what would the critic say to you?
Well, I like the question, like, is this true?
That's a good one. Is that true?
It's just so simple. Like, and I love the shifting from I am to you are and
Yes.
pulling the parasite out, and then just seeing it's so great. And then the question is that true? And then, I feel like I'm asking because I can feel that childhood innocence. I can go back to being like I know I was a happy baby. My mom told me I would just like sit in my crib and like smile at everybody and want to be picked up by everyone. There's these
Yes.
pictures of me just like this innocence, beauty, openness, open-heartedness that I identify as my true essence. You know, that's the computer program before the virus. So I
Oh,
have that image. I can feel that's really who I am. So from that place, that me, to say to this thing, this virus, this externalized critic, is that true? Like, no, no. I'm so lovable. I'm so
yes.
lovable
Yes.
by me. I love that little me. I love that
Yeah.
little me. So sweet.
Yes.
So sweet.
Yeah. And imagine we could just continue to identify with that sweet part of
Right.
ourselves that's gotten criticized now for 50 something years, forever, 40, 50 years, or however old you happen to be. If we can re identify with the one who gets criticized instead of believing that we don't like ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
believing that we are embarrassed of ourselves, believing that we judge ourselves, instead of believing that, like, push that judge outside and give ourselves a break and just get to like smell the fresh air and feel our bodies, and this is where, as long as we have a strong critic, we don't have access to pleasure. It will block us, it will
Mm-hmm.
sabotage all of our efforts to
Mm-hmm.
experience pleasure. It just doesn't
Mm-hmm.
really let us. It doesn't let us go very far, at least. And that's why people develop addictions, because that's like pleasure to the extreme,
Right.
pleasure that actually winds up hurting us, because we have to go so far to get the critic out. We have to like obliterate our minds, it's like
Right.
drink
Right.
so much so that finally we're free of that mind, or
Mm,
like whatever,
interesting.
to
Right.
kind of quiet that mind so we can have some fun, but it's much easier just to make a little representation of your critic and get it out of you. And then you could do it all the time with no substances.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so pleasure is what's on the other side of externalizing the inner critic. And
Just
aw, mouse.
the cat is chewing on my arm for some reason. I don't know why. You know, ow!
He's like, let's do the pleasure thing.
It's not
Pleasure
pleasure.
for me.
Sometimes he just attacks. You know, cats are weird.
Yeah, it is pleasure for him.
Don't make eye contact.
Maybe he's playing the critic. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. And then there's, in society, there's like such a big fear of narcissism, judgment around being self-centered.
I gotta get
Mouse.
rid of the cat. I
He's
gotta get rid of the cat.
vicious.
It's like, yeah. Okay, here we go. Off it goes. Okay. Okay, I'm back. Thank
Right.
you.
Yeah, yeah. So this is why I wanted to start teaching pleasure, is mostly to help people get the inner critic out and then to start building that muscle of pleasure.
Right.
And that's why I do the inner critic workshop for free. I want everybody to have that, if that could be my gift to humanity, is to help people. And I will put the link in the podcast notes here for the workshop. You can do it. I have recordings up on YouTube. Um, Tomorrow is my second one, and it's going to be better than the first one because I've added to it.
Great. And is that available for anybody that wants to see it recorded?
Yeah, it's
Oh,
free. I don't think, maybe I can get this podcast out tomorrow morning, Monday morning, but it's free to come live, and I'll upload it to YouTube, and everybody gets the recording, and it's free, 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 because this is what I want my gift to humanity to be, is this restructuring of the inner critic and externalizing the inner critic so we can have a life, so we can enjoy
right,
our lives. It's
right.
it's very simple. It's so simple.
I can't wait. That's great.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's so important. Want to see mine?
Yeah.
I call him Tsar Fuzzy Mouth. He's Russian, like some of my family, where I think most of the criticism comes from, is on that side of the family, my Russian side. And yeah, what he says is, you are squandering your potential. You are squandering your potential. You're made for more. You could do so much better.
Mm,
And if you get underneath that message, like if I ask him, like, what do you really want for me? To reach your potential, strive for your potential. I am striving for my potential every day. I do. But when, at this point, I have a pretty good relationship with Czar Fuzzy Mouth, and I do find him ridiculous, and he is outside me. But when he was inside me, I would have said, you're the one who stops me from reaching my potential from the way that you talk to me. I cower from you and you keep me hiding and not striving for my potential. So if that's what you really want for me, if you really, really want me to reach my potential, help me. You have all
mm,
this power. Help me. Be my coach, not my critic. You know,
ooh,
be my coach. Every critic, that's the high vibration of the critic is the coach.
right.
Because the coach has all the perspective, all the power, and it's rooting for you, not against you. It's not trying
Oh,
to
I
control
love
you.
that.
It's not trying to push you down. Yeah, a critic is a great coach. You just have to be in relationship with it. I have to coach my critic to be my coach.
Right.
I have to ask for that. And most people just don't ever get past the step of just cowering in the corner.
Hmm. Hmm.
So yeah, and then it's like, what can you say to that? You can't. The critic can so the critic's uh, his perspective is so shallow. It's so without depth. It doesn't have any legs to stand on. Look at him; he's just a head. I'm the one with the body.
So for those people who are just listening, do you
Oh
want to
yes, thank
describe what Senor Fuzzy Mouth, what's his name? Czar?
Czar Fuzzy Mouth.
What are we looking at?
Oh, it's my little rock, and he's got a bunch of hair coming out of his mouth because critics are just, full of hot air, basically, or a hairy mouth. And he's got a funny little nut on his head and some googly eyes. And one of his eyes is actually like pushed in. I think he's got dropped too many times on his eye. He doesn't see very clearly.
Ah, right, right.
Totally. Yeah. So I just made mine out of whatever objects I had around and I just glued some stuff together. And he's ridiculous. But the thing is that when you make your inner critic, if you do watch that video, you have to actually love the critic. You have to get it to a point where you're like, I kind of like that thing.
I'm with
Otherwise, the
you.
critic will criticize your making of the critic. So you have to get past the I don't like it phase.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it happens a lot with crafts and stuff like that. It's like, I don't like it, I don't like it, I don't like it. Oh, no, with that nut on its head, it looks pretty cute. Yeah.
I love the idea of not well, maybe repurposing is the right word.
Uh-huh.
The internalized critic, to go from critic to coach.
Upgrading it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, right,
It's like
right.
the updated program,
It's
right?
update, it's update.
So the piece that's missing is relationship, is the fact that we hide and we don't talk to the critic. And as soon as we turn and say, like, is that true? Or what do you really want for me? Why are you here? What's your purpose?
Hmm.
Why don't you help me? The critic, like I said, no legs, no legs to stand on. It's just a head. Yeah,
Huh,
yeah.
cool.
It's really cool. It's exciting because we get our innocence back. We get our lives back. We get the ability to enjoy life back. We don't have to criticize ourselves for enjoying life.
Hmm. So, talk a little bit about your offering, if you would, the Pleasure Boot Camp, which I took, which was awesome.
Yeah.
And we have just a few more minutes left here, so I just want to
Okay.
make sure you have time for that.
Sure, yeah. So after we externalize the inner critic, then we can focus on pleasure. And we have to go back to square one because nobody ever taught us to experience pleasure. Almost nobody. Maybe we watch people on Instagram or whatever on their surfboard, but, like on a day-to-day, moment-to-moment basis, most people are in their heads because they're log jammed up there with the critic. They're not in their bodies and they're not tuning into pleasure. And so the first question I ask people when they do pleasure boot camp is on a scale of 1 to 10, On a moment to moment basis, how often are you choosing to seek pleasure? And most people are, if they're honest with themselves, down at like a 1 or a 3 or something like that. I mean, are you really, even me, who's a pleasure teacher, I might be a 6, because most moments are filled with other, excuse me, with other things. Most moments are filled with gotta do this, gotta do that, just, just daily life. We're not constantly in a state of choosing pleasure usually.
Hmm. Hmm.
But whatever number we're at as a default, we can always increase that just by learning or choosing to choose pleasure, making a decision that I'm worth it, my life is worth it. What if I were to not really change anything in my life, simply as I do all the things I do, choose to seek pleasure? So now, because we're talking about it, I internally just did this. My body started moving. I started wiggling, and all of a sudden, my pleasure experience goes up
For
just because.
me, I just looked out the window and I see these beautiful trees blowing in the wind, which I
Mhm.
didn't really pay attention before. And then my pleasure experience went up.
Exactly.
It's almost, not almost, it seems like it's a mindfulness practice.
Yes.
It's choosing to move towards seeing pleasure, or like putting like a different feel, like choosing the pleasure filter. You're going to have a filter of something anyway. So
Right.
choosing the pleasure filter to see the
Exactly.
world that way. And that's a mindfulness practice.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
fact, so I took your boot camp, dear
Hmm.
listeners,
I
and
remember.
just for those who don't remember,
Yes.
and it was super cool. We went through different areas in our lives. Every week was a different area. The one that was most impactful for me was pleasure eating, because
Eating.
food, my relationship with food is wrought with guilt and pain and stories. I've been a recovering bulimic since early teenage years. So my relationship with food is not filled with pleasure. So the mindfulness act of pleasure eating and taking in food and being with the tastes and the feels and the nourishing, and in eating from that place rather than like the internalized critic of what, like, it was so transformative for me. That one piece was so, I mean, there's so many other pieces, but just choosing a different filter
Yeah.
from this old filter. It was an update. It was an update. I
Yeah.
updated, and that has stuck with me.
Yeah. I feel like if everybody could just do even just that one thing of changing their relationship with food, and a lot of people will say, like, I love food, but how present are you when you're
Right.
really eating?
Hmm.
What do you love about food? And is there one thing I didn't do in this last pleasure boot camp, or I didn't highlight enough, is there a relationship between hunger and eating for you? Because I think a lot of us are just on schedules and we just
Hmm.
eat during the time that we're used to eating. That means we're not tuned into our bodies. We're not feeling like, am I really hungry? Or do I just feel like eating? Or is it just the right time to eat? Or does eating just sound good? But when we make that link between our actual bodies and hunger, hunger can be kind of ecstatic when we realize it's our body talking to us. We're in communication with our bodies sending us a message saying, please feed me. And then I could say, thank you, body, for giving me this message. Yes, what shall we eat? What are we craving? Not just because it's on the menu, not just because it's in the fridge, but because, like, that's what I'm craving. That's what I
Hmm.
really want right now. So there's so many layers of it that we can get deeper and deeper into pleasure. And then, I remember recognizing that a meal is like, you can do this big shebang at a restaurant, and spend tons of money, but the amount of time that you actually eat is usually between like 5 and 10 minutes. It's so short, it goes by so fast. And so I really like to stretch that out, look at the clock, make sure I have enough time, and remove all distractions for my eating. And
That's
it's
a big one.
really
So many, I mean, sitting down to eat, like the phone comes out and suddenly you're scrolling or reading the news or watching a
Exactly.
video and like, where are you?
Or
Where
talking
are
to
you?
someone, or
Right.
yeah, or even moving around the house with my bowl of food, doing stuff with one hand while I eat with the other, just it's yeah, it's so easy to miss the meals, to miss the amazing pleasure that's available from eating.
Hmm.
And then also, we're not tuned into satisfaction with food. Usually we eat until we're full. I mean, I want to say we. I used to eat until I was full, and then I would feel sick when I was done eating. I would feel
Hmm.
sick because if you eat until you're full, that means your stomach is full, and then you have a whole esophagus full of stuff that still needs to cram itself in there. So that's when we feel sick. But if we
Hmm.
can stop when we feel satisfied, then the esophagus stuff will get in there, and then we're really full, but not over full, not
Hmm.
stuffed, not
Hmm.
feeling sick.
Right.
So if just that unawareness while we're eating, uh, it's just a sabotage of our bodies. And again, we're just log jammed up in our heads, and we think we love food, hot dogs, pizza, whatever. But is that really what we love? Is that really what our body loves? Yeah. And do we really enjoy it fully? Do we really taste it, see it, smell it,
Yeah.
appreciate it?
Right.
Yeah.
It's a mindful practice.
Yeah.
It's really
Yeah.
beautiful. It's great.
Yeah. Yeah. So many levels of it. So that's the third week. From now on, I'm doing 5 weeks instead of 4. Our first boot camp was in February, so it was a short month. But from now on, it'll always be 5 weeks. And so the first week is air and breath, focusing on using our breath to slow down, be more mindful, and choose pleasure. And also, air is also thoughts and the way we think about things. So, kind of creating a little spaciousness inside our minds and the way we think about our lives and the way we think about pleasure. And there's a lot of space inside when we get the inner critic out. It's way
Hmm.
more spacious.
Yeah. Right.
And the second week is going to be the body. So, how do we treat our body? How do we touch our body? How do we feel about our bodies? Can we have a new relationship with our bodies? How do we touch? I think I already said that. How do we touch? How do we touch? How do we touch our bodies? Most of us don't because we have the projected critic like, well, what would people think if I was to touch myself lovingly? What would people think? What would like the floating around critic, judge of society think if they saw me touching myself with love, treating
Mhm.
myself with love? I was just thinking today when I was putting my oil on my face, how most people just wish they would find somebody who would adore them. We just want to be adored. We want somebody out there to come in and say, "You're the most beautiful, precious thing, and I just want to touch you and love you and kiss you all over exactly the way you want to be touched and loved and kissed all over." Right? And just, I want to shower you with compliments. But, like, hello, we can do that for ourselves. We're
Right.
here all the time.
Yeah.
But instead, we're criticizing ourselves, hoping to find somebody else to shower us with the stuff that we can really give ourselves. We can
Mhm.
be that person. There's nothing wrong with doing that.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. I love, I'm totally a self-contained human being in a certain way. And not that I don't love people and I need people, I need them for lots of things. But on an emotional level, I'm completely self-contained because I have this constantly regenerating love cycle that goes through. Just like my let us grow, it's like a hydroponic system of love that's just constantly washing myself. I don't need anybody else to love me. But I like it. It feels good. But I generate that and it amplifies inside myself. And I want that for everybody. We can all do
Mhm.
that for ourselves.
Wow.
Like, imagine the angels. Like, if you can just imagine a group of angels, they're, well, I don't know how you think about angels, but I just imagine that without the critic, we can just all exist. We can just exist and be in the field of joy and pleasure and peace and love. We can share with each other, but we don't have to have that desperate need of somebody else validating our existence.
Right.
You know, we could just be.
Hmm.
Yeah. So anyway, then week 3 is food. So air, thought, mind, and then body, and then food. It's going to be a week of its own. Before I had body and food kind of crammed together, and it was too much, I thought. And then emotions and movement. And then the last week is creativity and spirit and play.
Hmm.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
great.
Oh, I'm so excited. I'm so excited. Yeah. So it's going to run, this boot camp is going to be the entire month of May. And I'm doing it as a basically pay what you can. I mean, I have a suggested price, but if somebody wanted to come and they couldn't afford my suggested price, I would just take whatever they could afford, you know? And I like happy to do money back guarantee and like, just like, how do I give this away? How do I help people with pleasure? I'm just ready to do it. And I would have thousands of people in my class if I could. I just, yeah, I need to make that bridge. So if you happen to be listening to this podcast now and you've made it this far and it's not May yet, I would love to have you join me for a pleasure boot camp in May. It starts May 1st and goes through the whole month of May, and I'll do it again in a few months. So if you missed this one, you're listening to this later, just get on my email list and you'll get information about it. You can do that on my website, and I'll also put it in my notes here. Yeah,
Great. Great.
amypalatnik.com. Yeah.
Great, Aim.
Yeah.
It's really amazing.
Yeah. Imagine people just felt good about themselves or even neutral, even just neutral, just
Right.
no opinion. You don't have to feel great. Just seek pleasure. It's okay. Like it's just like getting rid of the opinions, the judgments
Mm.
about ourselves.
Yeah, I think that externalizing the internalized critic is an incredible place to start. Start there.
Yeah.
Get the parasite out.
Get
Reboot.
the parasite out.
Up.
Yeah.
Reboot. Update.
Yeah. And then turn it into your friend.
All right, a coach. A coach.
Your
Your
coach.
ally. An
Yes. Your
ally. Yeah.
ally.
Mm,
Yes. Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah. Ah, thanks, Jess.
Thanks, Aim.
Yeah.
I'm so lucky to know you.
Hmm.
Yeah, you were such a gift to me and to so many others.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's really remarkable the work that you do and what you offer and
Thank you.
how you live it as an example. Like that's the biggest thing. Like you live it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah. I just can't hoard it. I have to give it away. Otherwise,
Yeah,
I just
right?
have,
What
I
are you
have,
hoarding? How can you hoard that?
yeah. But I just feel like for most of my life being a potter and everything, I think I kind of figured it out. I was like, ooh, you can just have a good life. But now I'm at a part of my life in my 50s where I feel like I have to disseminate, I have to help people, I have to share it, I have to package it in a way that people can digest it and implement it.
Yeah,
So I'm committed to that, to figuring that out.
and
Thank you
you're
for
doing
helping
it.
me do that,
You're doing it. Yeah, for sure.
helping me. Yeah.
Speaking of which, it is about lunchtime
Yes.
because my body's telling me I'm hungry. So I'm
Great.
looking forward to a pleasure meal.
Nice. Enjoy it. Savor every bite. Mmm. I love you so much.
I love you too, Aim. Thank
Yeah.
you.
We're far, but we're never far.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah. Okay, everybody. Same
All
with
right,
you. We're far,
dears.
but we're never far. We're always right here. Let's all have a pleasure wave. Goodbye. Goodbye, everyone. We love you. Hasta la vista. See you soon. Sayonara.
Have a beautiful, pleasurable day.
Bye, everybody.
Mwah.
Mwah.
So it's interesting, Aim. Toward the end of talking about this, I felt myself kind of shut down and disengaged. It felt like I was on board for a while, and then it just felt like it was too much. I think part of it is feeling like, but there is pain in the world, there is suffering, and to live a life of pleasure is to kind of like ignore that and discount that and discredit the suffering that is in the world. Like as much as it, living a life, a pleasure-based life sounds amazing and sounds like, wow, like this one and only precious life. But there's something also about like feeling and receiving and being present to the pain and suffering in the world and not glossing it over, not skipping over it, not spiritual bypass. I don't even know what that it means, but to not honor and acknowledge, I guess.
Hmm. So I specifically focus on pleasure instead of happiness
Mm-hmm.
because pleasure is a somatic experience that that it's a choice, and I don't think that it's separate from suffering. So I think that we can be suffering and still choose pleasure. Not necessarily happiness all the time. I think
Mm-hmm.
that those kind of counteract each other, but even when I'm in my saddest place, there's something about it that I can choose pleasure. And one of the people from Pleasure Boot Camp said to me that her recognition or her aha is that as long as the energy is moving, as long as things are flowing, as long as there's a flow, that she can experience pleasure. And it's only when things are stopped up or there's resistance or a shutdown, and that usually comes from the mind, that pleasure feels like it's not available. So crying, can be such a release and a relief. Grief, when it's moving,
Mm-hmm.
somehow to me there is pleasure in that.
Mm-hmm.
But what one thing that you said before was that it's edgy, and that sounded different to me than, are we discounting suffering if we choose pleasure?
I think the edge is like if I choose pleasure, then it does. There's something about I don't know how to I don't know how to explain it. But I like the distinction between pleasure and happiness. I feel like that's important.
It's really important. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, somebody's at the door now.